Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. To my new viewers, I hope you hit that subscribe button. Check out some of my content. Ring the little bell up there. Ding, ding, ding. Everybody else, welcome back. I appreciate the support as always. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sure some of you may have heard about this case, but I have some new details for you. So stick with me about this case in Waterbury, Connecticut, where the stepmother allegedly kidnapped her stepson and locked him in a room for the past 20 years, right? If this is, she was charged with a host of different charges: kidnapping, neglect, endangerment, torture. I mean, there's just a ton of charges. And right now they're alleged, and her name is 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan, and she's been arrested and charged with those things as his stepmother. And the conditions inside of the house were absolutely horrific. All right, we're going to get into that a little bit, and I'm going to tell you why I'm giving you this story. There's a point, a real point that I'm going to make on why I'm giving you this story at the end. Her stepson, his name has not been released. He is 32 years old. It is stated that he has been kept captive inside of the room. One station news report said 11 years old. Another one said 12 years old. Doesn't really make a difference, but that he's been in the room, locked in there for the last 20 years. That there was locks outside of the door, more than one lock to outside of the door to keep him locked in the room. When they found him, he was 68 pounds, 5'9" and 68 pounds. And the way that they were able to find him is he took hand sanitizer and some towels, and he set them on fire, and he created a pretty bad fire. He said he did that because he wanted to escape. This is a crazy, crazy case, man. The fact that he was in there since he was 12 years old, and he was a 32-year-old man. As they said, you'll see in the report that it was like a 6 by 9 room, which is just a little bit bigger than a prison cell. But it is about the same size as a prison cell. To be trapped in there for 20 years is just crazy. Another crazy thing about this case is that family services was called in on this boy's welfare when he was in fourth grade, and obviously they didn't do their job, or they neglected to find something, because family services didn't come through on this one. Let me play a little clip for you, and then we'll get right back to it.
The stepson, who's now 32, says from the time he was 12, he was kept in an 8 by 9 foot room.
Yeah, and it wasn't until he took matters into his own hands that he was found. Fox 8's Teresa Priolo is in the newsroom with these disturbing details, to say the least, Teresa.
Yeah, incredibly disturbing. Steve and Natasha, this is a story that came to light because of a 911 call for a house on fire. What authorities say they found was a fire set by a man who was held captive inside of his home for 2 decades. We want to warn you, the story and the details of it are difficult to hear. The man says he intentionally set that fire because he wanted his freedom. He's 32 years old. He weighs just 68 pounds. Waterbury, Connecticut police say he was so emaciated that his body resembled that of a patient with advanced cancer. The man was trapped inside of his home, he says, drinking from the toilet to stay hydrated. He was held inside of a room that had multiple locks on the outside of the door. He says his stepmother, 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan, subjected him to prolonged abuse, starvation, severe neglect, and inhumane treatment. She's charged with assault, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, cruelty to persons, and reckless endangerment.
There's an adult that was 5'9" and 68 pounds. There's some apparent orthopedic issues. The room was very small. Honestly, when I read about it and talk to the investigators and overlook the interviews, it was worse than the conditions of a jail cell.
Yeah, let that sink in. The victim claims his stepmother and another person found him after he lit that fire, and they tried to wash his face to clean him up before firefighters arrived. They also said they tried to remove a bolt lock from the door frame. So the last time this man really interacted with the outside world was when he was in grade school, but he stopped going to school in 4th grade when family services started asking questions. The last time police were in this home was last April. The stepmother's attorney says these charges are outlandish.
What we have right now are allegations. And yes, sometimes allegations look bad, but that's why we have a process. And that's why we have a defense. And we intend to mount one in this case. And we intend to push back on all the allegations that have been made against her.
All right, so if you're like me and you're wondering, how did this go on for 2 decades without anybody noticing? Some neighbors say they had no idea that the man was even in the house. But the man's former school principal says, quote, "We knew it, we reported it, and not a thing was done." Steve, back to you.
Wow, lots to still figure out how that all took place for so long, allegedly. All right, Teresa, thanks so much.
So there you see the little clip, about what's going on. You see that the lawyer testified as well. It's unbelievable that the school principal said we all knew that something was wrong and nobody did anything about it. So obviously a lot of questions need to be answered now. They need to go back to family services and see who was in charge of this case, who was the investigator, how many follow-ups were done, what reports were filled out, what was documented, because it definitely appears that somebody neglected to do their job, right? As they also said in the report, the biological father did live in the house. What they didn't tell you is the biological father, I don't think they told you, he died 2 years ago. Okay, so the son gave a full detailed report to the police officers about what transpired since he was young. I mean, his memory seemed to be fine from several different reports that I listened to and read about, and he gave detailed accounts about how he was treated. He said that his father used to let him out to do chores inside of the house, and he used to let him out to watch TV, and so at that point he was coming out of the room. But once his father died, that really ceased to exist anymore, and he was mostly just locked in this room. Kimberly Sullivan has made bail. They didn't tell you that in that story, but since that story, she has made bail. She made a $300,000 bond. She bonded out, and the district attorney requested that she be confined to house arrest, and they denied that, and they denied the ankle bracelet on her. So Kimberly Sullivan is out in society and free to live her life until this case goes to court. You are innocent until proven guilty. Kind of a pretty, I don't know, what to say on that. But she made bond. She made a $300,000 bond. So either the lawyer put it up for her, or she had some money in the stash. Another thing that struck me as odd a little bit though is that the victim admitted that he had to urinate inside of water bottles, and that he would dump them out the window in the room. When I heard that statement, I said, "Oh, he had a window in the room, that opened." He had a window in the room that opened because he was able to pour the urine in the bottles out the window. And then you wonder, why didn't he call for help? The 2 statements that he made is that his father used to let him out. That's 2 years ago when he was 30 years old. His father used to let him out, and he didn't attempt to get out of the house at 30 years old when his father let him out to do chores. And he didn't scream for help outside of the window. If he had an open window, the house looks like it was in a residential neighborhood. Why didn't he scream for help outside of the window as well? And it could be a case of what they call Stockholm syndrome, and I'm sure you've heard what Stockholm syndrome is. Stockholm syndrome is when the victim starts to feel pity for the person that's abusing them. It's when the victim starts to feel positive feelings for the person that abuses them. When the victim starts to have sympathy for the person that is abusing them, because the abuse has been going on so long. And that's what Stockholm syndrome is. And so I would think that someone who was neglected from a young child, from fourth grade, that he was suffering Stockholm syndrome. And by the time, let's say he was in fourth grade, after experiencing suffering that abuse, by the time would have been in sixth grade, seventh grade, he would have mentally been so damaged that he like accepted his fate. You know what I mean? And you just accept your situation and your circumstances, and maybe even believe that you're supposed to be treated like that. There's a whole psychology to Stockholm syndrome, But the stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, is denying all charges. She said that she's surprised these charges were brought against her, and that she provided food for him, and she provided shelter for him, and that he was not locked and confined in his room, as they say. And there's two sides to every story. That's what she's saying. And of course, the average person is going to declare their innocence in the situation. So I guess a lot of this is going to come out in court. My main reason for telling you this story is that, even if you heard about it, is what I wanted to point out is that you never know your neighbor. You've heard this before. You never know who's living next door to you. You never know their mind frame. You never know what they're involved in. You never know what they're thinking. You never know their behavior. Obviously, Kimberly Sullivan would go out of the house every day and live her life and appear to be such a normal person. And meanwhile, there was a stepson allegedly locked in the room being tortured at 68 pounds. As you heard the officer say, the conditions were horrific. He said worse than a jail cell. So very sad and unfortunate reality for this young man. Thank God he made it out alive. They said that he looked like a cancer patient in the last stages. So I'm sure they're going to give him tons of nourishment and try and get this guy, back on his feet after 20 years of what it appears to be torture. So I wanted to give you an update on the story. If I get any more information on the story, I will give it to you. But that is a pretty crazy, crazy case, man. There's some crazy people in this world, man. I will keep you posted. You guys take care. Stay tuned. Love you. All my best.